family-owned shop in Loganville, Soesby's Garage for all your automotive repair needs. We service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. We repair engines, alternators, brakes, alignments, AC systems, and more, using certified technicians with over 90 years of combined experience. We also offer same-day service for some repairs. Soesby's Garage, 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville. Dependable, honest, and fair. Look us up on Google or Facebook. We'll take good care of you.
Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. We are the cornerstone of security in the Southeast.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Case in Point, brought to you by Paradigm Security Services. I am Rick Strawn, your host, president of Paradigm Security Services, and we're excited to be with you today on Business RadioX. We're coming to you from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, located in the beautiful Sonesta Gwinnett Place Hotel here in Atlanta and Duluth, Georgia. Each week we plan to feature businesses in the Atlanta area, in Duluth, Gwinnett County, and people that are within those businesses. While all businesses have security concerns, not all are about physical security, and we'll touch on that and all related aspects somewhere along the way through security during the course of each show. My guest today, I'm very happy to have Dave Emanuel. For those of you that don't know him, he's Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Snellville here in Gwinnett County. Beautiful City of Snellville. What do they say about Snellville?
Everybody is proud to be somebody in Snellville.
There you go. And, Snellville's got about 20,000 population.
Mm-hmm.
It's grown a lot in the 70s, 80s, 90s, really expanded.
Yes, it really grew, as most of Gwinnett did, through the 70s and 80s, when Gwinnett was the fastest growing county in the country. And a number of years ago, we noticed that it kind of lost its small town feel. And the city council at the time started a group called STAT, which is Snellville Tourism and Trade, and brought out farmers market, upgraded our magazine, and tried to get events going on that really brought that small town feel together, and it's been very successful.
Well, it's brought a lot of it back. Let me ask you what I usually is my first question. Who is Dave Emanuel? Where were you born? What got you into doing what you're doing, and what do you do on a professional basis?
Well, I was born and raised in the lovely city of New York.
Oh, one of those.
One of those. And got tired of the Northeast, moved to California for 14 years, lived in Southern California. And it got to be a little bit much. The thing I found really interesting about Southern California is that the lifestyle there was pretty cheap. The only thing that was expensive was housing. And that's changed over the years, but at the time I lived there. But people always seem to be aspiring to something that they really couldn't achieve. And I remember we moved to Houston for a couple of years, and I walked into a store, and at the time I was making a living as a freelance writer. And the guy said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm a freelance writer." And he said, "Really?" And I thought, here it comes, because in California it would have been, "Oh, my father owns a magazine," or "My uncle won an Academy Award for writing something," and on and on and on. And this guy turns around and says, "Oh, really? What's that like? I've never spoken to a freelance writer before." And I thought, wow, somebody that's
this is different.
Yeah, somebody's not trying to play Can You Top This? So, I could see no reason to live in Houston, Texas, frankly.
I can appreciate
it's
that.
Flat,
I'm from Texas, but not Houston.
It's flat, it's hot, it's humid, and
kind of like the armpit. I mean, no offense to Houston. I'm a
Right.
Texas boy.
Right. But, and I had done some work for a magazine in Georgia, so we got looking at our options and thought, I don't want to stay in Texas. And there was a lot about the Atlanta area at the time I really liked. And we made a list and looked at pluses and minuses and said, the list was so much longer of pluses for the Atlanta area, and we moved here in 1983. And wound up in Snellville pretty much by happenstance. And liked it and found 10 acres, and we bought that, built a house. And then, excuse me, I was actually at the gym one day, and I was talking to a guy, and we were talking about current events, and I said, it really bothers me. People complain, and don't do anything. And I thought, you just described yourself. So I volunteered for the appeals board in Snellville. I thought I'd like to get involved with the city and see what's going on. Yeah, maybe I could help. And at the time, Snellville was in one of its dysfunctional periods with the city council. And it literally took 2 years before the mayor called me and said, well, we think you'd be better on the planning commission. So they approved me for the planning commission. I served 2 years on it, and one of the other council members said, you need to run for city council. And I thought, I'd never been involved in politics before. And I thought, well, why not? So fortunately, I ran unopposed, which anybody running for election, boy, if you can run unopposed, that's the best way to do it.
It's hard to trash yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. So I'm now in my third term as city councilman, and last year I was elected by the other council members as mayor pro tem, which is a great sounding title, but all it really means is if they can't find the mayor, they call me.
They call you.
Yeah.
Well, it's an honor to be selected, though.
Sure. Yeah, it is. And it's been, I think, really rewarding. We've made a lot of, I think, really positive changes in Snellville. We're starting on our town center. Snellville never had a town center. It just kind of grew up at the crossroads of 124 and 78. And it was a mercantile center. And people would come literally from miles around to purchase whatever they needed for their farm, for their house. And then over the years, it just kind of grew, became a bedroom community. And as with pretty much every place in Gwinnett County, people are looking more and more for a small city where it's I hate to use the term because it's overused, but it's live, work, and play. People want to...
Something comfortable.
Yeah, and they want to be able to walk to where they want to go, so they don't have to get in the car and drive and park. And there's still going to be some of that, certainly. But, we're looking at, like pretty much every city in Gwinnett, a multi-use facility where there'll be living space above retail and commercial and office space close by, so you can walk to work, walk to a restaurant, and never have to get in your car.
Multi-use seems to be where it's at right now, as far as, especially when you can get into like the town centers like yours, Norcross, Swanee.
Right.
There's been so much go on with the development in that area that, that brings me up to talking a little bit about development and redevelopment. It's changing the face of small cities all through Georgia. I know it's changing the face of Snellville. And, what other things have y'all done to help that atmosphere, and especially in the redevelopment area? I know development is big. Y'all have a wonderful site that's just come in there and landed right there in your backyard with the Amazon. And is there other stuff that you got in the works, or what else you doing?
Redevelopment is tough because people always look for the new. And there really isn't much redevelopment going on in Snellville at the present time. And I think when this town center gets built, that's when it's going to start, because now you have something compelling and a reason to redevelop. Like a lot of small cities, Snellville has been pretty much all residential with some commercial. And Snellville's unique in that along Highway 124, it's the second busiest commercial area in the county. It's only second to Mall of Georgia in terms of revenue generated. And you can get pretty much anything you want somewhere along Highway 124. And if you drive by there, a lot of times you'll see license plates from DeKalb County, Newton County, because people come to Snellville to shop. So that's been one of the biggest advantages for Snellville, having that commercial base.
Y'all just did a big redevelopment on that intersection.
Yes. Yeah, that was done in conjunction with the state DOT. One of the things people don't often recognize is the fact that even though a street or a highway is within the city, it's not controlled by the city.
Still a state highway.
It's a state highway or a county highway. And we were fortunate to be able to work with the DOT and get some things that turned it into a really nice intersection. We have a signal bridge instead of wires hanging across, and it really made the intersection a lot more attractive.
Well, I can tell you traffic has definitely improved over what it was during construction.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and even before construction, the only only issue we have is it's a unique intersection in terms of the displaced
Traffic
left
flow.
turn. And I had my drone up the other day taking some pictures actually for use by the CID. And I thought, while I'm up here, I'm just going to run some video so people can see how it works. And what are the chances that the time I put the drone up and shoot video, a car comes up 124 past all the signs that say no turns and turns right into the oncoming traffic lane? It's just, I don't know what part of no turns is difficult to understand, and that happens on a pretty frequent basis.
It's ahead in places other than where it should be.
Yes, and the sun's not shining where they are.
Exactly. And coming from law enforcement, I totally get it. Well, I went through that the other day, and it was, if you haven't been through it, you need to stop and think, because the tendency is you want to make that right turn. Mm-hmm. But the signs are all over the place to help you do that. But it's just not paying attention.
Right.
It's just doing what you want to do when you want to do it.
Exactly.
That's not a good idea in that intersection. I can tell you.
No, that's for sure.
Well, do you have something else you want to say?
No, that's it's been, I think, very successful in moving traffic through Snellville. That intersection has approximately 100,000 cars a day.
Wow,
going through it.
You'd never think of it in that small area, but that's a lot of traffic. And a lot of the traffic, the idea is to get it to stick around a while and shop and all that. And speaking of traffic, traffic's a challenge throughout the region, and yet there's no clear solution. And it seems to be the fallback is outdated technology, that type of thing. So, that seems to be the preferred approach. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've written a number of articles and actually spoke in front of the Board of Commissioners about their current proposal. And I've always thought that the only thing missing from the current proposal with extending heavy rail is that the mode of propulsion hasn't been specified. And I think if they specify steam engines, they'll have the perfect 19th century solution to a 21st century problem.
Pretty much.
Again, having grown up in New York City, I've got a pretty good handle on heavy rail type transit. And to me, the core problem with MARTA is that MARTA has 38 stations. The New York City subway system has 426 stations.
Exactly.
So extending MARTA into Gwinnett County simply gives more people the option of taking a transit system that doesn't take them where they want to go. Makes no sense. And at $250 million a mile, that 4 miles will cost $1 billion. That $1 billion would pay for 600 micro-transit routes for 16 years.
That's a lot.
And that would, obviously, you can't have 600 microtransit routes because you'd have buses running into buses. But
it's the idea of what it could pay for.
Exactly. So you'd break that down to maybe 200, and then you spend the rest on bus rapid transit, bus, and some of the other options.
The bus rapid transit is really the way that they've done it with the dedicated lanes in some cities and all that, and the traffic control, is really a pretty good way to go.
I think so, and frankly, you could have BRT as the common mnemonic for it, but you could have BRT literally tomorrow. It wouldn't be the most convenient because the stops aren't there, but you take a bus, you put it in the controlled access lanes on 85 and 75, and you could get people moving in very short order. There'd be some legal stuff you'd have to go through and get some plans put together, but you're not looking at building rail, building highways. It's already there. And I think somebody living along the route would gladly drive 2, 3, 4, 5 miles in the wrong direction to get on the bus stop and get into Atlanta. And the other problem I see with heavy rail extension is it only serves a sliver of the county. It does nothing for intra-county transit. So spending $1 billion to extend the MARTA system 4 miles into Gwinnett County doesn't help me get from Snellville to Norcross, Snellville to Sugar Hill, Snellville to Buford, or any other city-to-city transit.
And then you're still doing the regular old bus stuff.
Yeah, and again, if you took that money and put it back into bus service that would handle intra-county transit, I think you'd be a lot further ahead. But to me, unfortunately, the current plan that was approved by the county commissioners includes long-term the 4 miles of MARTA extension. And then, the other problem I have with it is MARTA, like all public transit systems, operates at a deficit. It's only supported by tax dollars. And in MARTA's case, I think the operating budget in 2019 was $762 million. Revenue was $141 million.
That's slightly off.
Slightly off. So you have a system that is being supported. 80% of the total operating budget is being supported by taxes and federal grants. So if Gwinnett County hooks up with MARTA, sooner or later, to me, it's like marrying somebody who's $500,000 in debt. That's pre-existing debt.
Eventually, you're going to take on some debt.
Exactly, one way or another. And you can have all the agreements you want, but down the road it's going to be, well, we have to do this, we have to do that. We have to pay our bills, and you're part of the system, so it may not be direct, but you have these bills to pay. They've got $2.2 billion in outstanding bonds that have to be paid off. So the debt service is just through the roof, and I think Gwinnett would be a lot better off doing its own transit system and actually covering the county the way it needs to be covered.
I don't think there's been a topic in Gwinnett County through the years that's been any more one side or the other side than transit. The only thing everybody can agree on is we absolutely have got to do something in the way of transit in this county.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's grown, the expansion, the traffic, the people that want to move here, the businesses that want to come and have some type of direct contact and transit to the airport, and without having to, drive in and get on. There's just got to be some way to do this to get everybody together, and right now, it's just, I don't see a way.
Well, it's difficult because transit is successful when it takes you from where you are to where you want to go.
Exactly.
In New York City, the subway system is frequently just the easiest way to get there because there's no parking. So if you drive in, you have nowhere to park, or
no taxis.
Cost you $30, $40. Yeah,
you've got to fight the taxis for the roadway.
Right, and it's just the most convenient way to do it. So when I have to drive 4 or 5 miles to get on a MARTA train, and then when I get to my closest to my final destination, I've got a 10-minute walk or an Uber or a Lyft ride or something else, why not just drive?
Well, it's hard to get 10 minutes to where you want to go if you're at a bus stop.
Right.
So, and that's walking, driving.
Yeah.
It's easy with a drive, but, and I'm the kind of person that's always driven myself.
Mm-hmm.
I did MARTA. I used to travel a lot doing teen transports and stuff, and I did MARTA I drove to the Doraville station and took MARTA to the airport. And I did that for a while, and finally I wanted to leave when I wanted to leave, and I'm a control freak, okay? I'm an A, and I like being in control of what's going on in my situation. And a lot of people are like that, but then a lot of people aren't. They want that convenience.
Sure.
Which somewhere along the way you got to come in the middle and you got to meet.
Well, you have to do that, and I think MARTA's ridership is dropping like public transit everywhere.
Yep.
And I think with autonomous vehicles on the horizon, let's face it, Lyft and Uber are relatively inexpensive now. What happens when they're autonomous? When
Exactly.
You're not paying a driver. And I think you're just going to see ridership continue to drop on public transit when there's more convenient operations. And frankly, I could see a day where you have little, call them transportation appliances, that do the micro route, can come together, hook up, run down 85 as a unit into a final destination. Let's say it's Atlanta, and then split up. So you're getting door-to-door transit. Now, if I can get door-to-door transit, why am I going to walk, drive, run to a MARTA station so that I can ride and then walk, drive, run to my final destination?
According to the Jetsons, we were already supposed to be in air cars by now.
I know. I don't know why it's taking so long.
I don't get it. We're still looking at how do we bring a train in here when we're supposed to be flying to these locations.
That's right.
Well, community pride is strong in many Gwinnett cities. And I know Snellville, you've launched Snellville Clean and Proud to keep the streets clean and building awareness of litter problems and organization and litter pickup campaigns and stuff. How's all that going? How's that developing?
Well, it was going really well until we got hit by COVID, and it's kind of difficult saying let's go out and get together and pick up litter. We actually have another litter pickup scheduled for 2 Saturdays from now, and the city has, through this Clean and Proud program, has adopted Oak Road. And it's amazing what you find when you go out and pick up litter. And Oak Road's relatively clean. But first time we did it, we picked up 33 garbage bags full of litter.
Wow.
I think I found enough nuts, bolts, and washers to build something. And just a whole variety of different things that people just discard out the window. Yeah.
Now you get a lot of face masks.
Yeah. Yeah, face masks and gloves are the latest, and it's really unfortunate that people aren't more aware of the effects of litter.
It's a shame.
It's a problem for some animals who get into the litter, and it gets in our sewage system, and it does create a lot of problems. It's more than just unsightly. It creates a lot of problems for the environment, and frankly, it's not that big a deal to hold on to a piece of paper until you get somewhere.
You get home.
Yeah. And dispose of it properly. And part of what we're trying to do with Clean and Proud is just build awareness. And, the fact that you didn't throw that piece of paper on the ground doesn't mean you can't pick it up. And, unfortunately, with some of the things that are going on, I tell people, try not to pick it up unless you have gloves on or something, because you never know what's on it. And fortunately, the fentanyl thing seems to have subsided somewhat. But I certainly wouldn't want anybody going out and picking up something and coming in contact with something like that.
Oh, it's like the old, in what you're talking about being unsightly, and not at all. It's like the old Superman comic thing where they had him lecturing the kids about throwing a bubblegum wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, there's just mounds and mountains and mountains of bubblegum wrappers. And so, it's true. It's the more, it's not just your little piece of paper. Right. It's a combination of everybody doing their part.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned COVID-19, which is, the response to COVID-19 has created a lot of confusion from our so-called experts. And it seems to change every week, whether something works, something doesn't work, something is good, something's bad. How are y'all dealing with that over in Snellville?
Well, we suspended our meetings for a while. Then we came back with them with social distancing and masks, and that's been what we've been doing so far. The problem, I think, is that this coronavirus is unlike anything that we've seen before, and typically we would have seen it go away in the summer months, which it hasn't. And I think there's a lot of confusion because there's so much politicizing of the issue.
Exactly.
My thought is it really doesn't hurt me to wear a mask, and you hear you're breathing your own carbon dioxide. Yeah, I think I can handle 15 minutes of carbon dioxide.
Unless you got bad breath.
Yeah. And I think to me, why not wear a mask? It doesn't hurt anything. And it's not like you're in an N95 mask, which is really tight for hours on end. You're in. I wear one when I go out publicly. I don't know if it does any good, but it certainly can hurt. And the cities in Gwinnett have a weekly conference call with Dr. Arona, who's in charge of the Gwinnett, Newton, Rockdale public health departments, and her standpoint is social distance, wear a mask, wash your hands. And I asked the other day, to me what's really mysterious is how it's transmitted. And I don't think we have a handle on the most frequent form of transmission, because it went from droplets in the air, respiratory droplets in the air, to respiratory droplets on surfaces, and then when you contact the surface, you get it on your hands, and you put your hands on your face, and you've got it.
And then it doesn't live long on surfaces, and then it doesn't stay in the air,
right.
and it dissipates with sunshine.
Correct.
And the air is great. Get outside, no stay at home.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem has been the mixed messages that, well, this is an essential business. You know, I really don't know that going to Home Depot or Lowe's to look at patio furniture is really essential. But those were deemed essential businesses. They stayed open. A lot of businesses were closed, and frankly, I would rather be in a restaurant where every other table is vacant than in a grocery store.
Oh, absolutely.
So, you know, I again, you have this mixed messaging, and I don't go much for conspiracy theories, but you know, you got to look at this thing, and all the people. It seems to come out every day. More and more, the people pushing the vaccines have a vested interest in vaccines. So, I'm going to tell you, we can't do anything until we have vaccines for everybody. And when we have vaccines for everybody, I'm going to make a couple $1 million out of it. There might be a conflict there.
Well, just a little bit. I know one of the things that really, I guess, irritates me the most about the whole thing is you've got a lot of people that just get up on their soapbox and really start preaching and condemning people for one decision, the way you do it or another. Or a good example is the people that really raise hell about somewhere like Costco requiring masks. You know, the bottom line is, the way I look at it, is if you don't want to wear the mask, don't go to Costco. Mm-hmm. If you want to go to Costco, wear the mask. You know, you have a choice of whether to patronize something or not patronize it. And so you make your decision just because somebody else has a different opinion. Our problem today is we have no tolerance for other decisions in a lot of areas, a lot of particular
that's
ideologies.
Right. That's correct. And you know, I think the other thing that people miss is I go into Costco, I don't wear a mask, I get the virus, and I sue Costco.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't Costco require masks?
Yeah.
Because they're doing it for two reasons.
It's their liability.
It's their liability and to protect people. And again, what does it hurt?
Yep. I have no problem with people that, I mean, if I don't want to wear it and I don't want to go in there, I just don't go in there.
Exactly.
Go somewhere else.
Exactly.
It's not that big a deal.
No.
If I need it that bad, put a mask on your damn face.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess really the other thing is all this stuff that's going on, and you've got to push to defund or diminish or unfund police departments. I know I am, of course, being retired, a tremendously big supporter of the Blue, of our police officers, law enforcement, and before I give my standpoint, how do you feel about it?
I'm reminded of a phrase from the 60s, because back then there was also an anti-police movement, and the phrase that always comes to mind is, if you don't like the police, next time you have a problem, call a hippie.
Call a crackhead.
Yeah, exactly. and I don't understand it. It's kind of like saying, you know, I got bit by a rabid dog, so therefore we should eliminate all dogs. It makes no sense. And oddly enough, one of the reasons people like moving to Snellville is because of our police department. We have
awesome, a good chief too.
Yeah, I think we have the best police department in the Southeast, if not the nation.
Of course, the chief comes from a pretty good location that I'm familiar with as far as department.
But and we did the things that people are clamoring for now. We did voluntarily years ago. I think we were one of the first police departments to have body cameras on all police officers. And I remember thinking at the time, these people were saying, yeah, we should have all these police officers wear cameras. And I'm thinking, yeah, we should, because then you'll see the real deal.
You'll also see what they don't do that people are saying they do.
Correct.
Which is more important than...
Correct.
I'm all for catching people doing what they shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what law enforcement does,
That's right.
is they catch people doing stuff they shouldn't do. But there's a lot of stuff out here where they're raising total hell. They're making a lot of complaints that really doesn't happen just to get their 5 minutes of fame. And unfortunately, it causes a lifetime of injury to the officer.
Yes, it does. And there's so much that goes on with a police stop. And our chief will constantly use the example of a police officer pulls over a car. There's a man and his wife and 2 kids in the back seat. Is this a high-risk stop or just a normal risk stop? And people say, oh, that's a normal to low-risk stop. And he said, well, the situation he's aware of, the officer got out, walked up to the car, the guy opened fire and killed him. Mm-hmm. And no stop is a low-risk stop because you never know what you're going to find. And I don't know what, I don't get it, frankly. You have somebody who's holding hostages. Well, we're going to send a social worker in, and he's going to talk the guy down. That's not going to happen. And I think there's just unrealistic expectations of what non-police people can do. Am I going to go into a domestic dispute unarmed? Not a chance, because
that's the most dangerous.
Exactly.
That is the most dangerous situation law enforcement handle. I can tell you firsthand.
Yeah. No, there's no question, because something that's just an argument between a husband and a wife turns violent in a heartbeat.
Both of them turn against you.
Right.
In a second.
So frankly, I think a lot of this is a criminal element and an element that just wants to run wild, anarchists that are using a legitimate protest as cover. Because when you look at what's been going on, what did burning down the Wendy's in Atlanta accomplish? Absolutely nothing.
What did shooting that 8-year-old girl accomplish?
Right. And the thing that I find is that only certain encounters are objectionable. Weekend after weekend, people are killed in Chicago. Nobody complains about that. Why not? It's been going on for years. I mean, Chicago is the poster child for violent neighborhoods, and it's really a small section of the city.
Absolutely.
But year after year after year, there were 40 people shot this weekend and 10 died, and 50 people shot this weekend and 12 died.
Look at Atlanta in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
It's just gone crazy.
Yeah. And I think when you get law enforcement out of it, you're going to have more of that. And I think New York City is going to pay a hell of a price for what they're doing.
Oh, they already are. Mm-hmm. It has shot up 300%, 400% in some areas.
In New York City, it has virtually been impossible to own a handgun since 1911. They passed something called the Sullivan Act. Mm-hmm. And over 100 years of handguns being illegal, you can get them under certain circumstances, but for the most part, you can't. So after 100 years of handguns being illegal, the logical conclusion is there is no handgun crime in New York City.
Right.
And I think if you look at the statistics, you'll find something completely different, because criminals always have guns.
Criminals are going to get the guns no matter what the law-abiding person does. I mean, that's just the fact.
That's right. And you look at people in Chicago and they say, well, that's because they go outside of Chicago to get the guns. Okay. Why don't they have the problem outside of Chicago? It's not a gun problem. It's a culture problem.
It's a culture problem. Exactly. I know that having dealt with law enforcement for so many years, been in those positions, that, like you say, every traffic stop is a legitimately, you just don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. That's why the fingerprints on the trunk. That's why there's so many things that are developed in here as a backup for at least recognition later, because you just don't know.
That's correct.
And we're in that situation now.
Yeah, and I think the more you allow that to happen, the more it's going to happen.
Well, something better happen to get this stopped and turned around, because if it doesn't, it's out of hand now. Mm-hmm. People don't realize just how bad it can really get if this doesn't get stopped. Nothing personal against the people doing it, but you have the Black Lives Matter that did the march at Stone Mountain and all, walking around with their handguns and walking around and protesting. I have no problem with. Mm-hmm. Getting up next to somebody in a car and trying to intimidate them, I got a problem with that. Why should I have to be worried about getting intimidated and being talked to like that just because I'm going somewhere down the street that they want to walk in the middle of the damn street?
Right.
So, right. Well, excuse me. Thank you so much. I could go on talking with you for probably another hour, but unfortunately, I don't have another hour to talk. Mike will cut me off in a heartbeat. So let me just say thank you for joining us on Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. And remember, you can join us live every Wednesday at 11:30 in the morning, or you can listen to our show anytime you want by going to businessradiox.com, clicking on the Gwinnett Studio, then click on Case in Point. Please go to any of your podcasts, iHeart, iTunes, just about any podcast platform you can get, and subscribe. Lets me know that you're there, lets me know that you've at least interested in some of my shows, and you'll learn something. Remember, the most important thing about this voting season coming up into November is not necessarily which party you vote for. Be informed before you vote. Pay attention to what you're doing. Don't just vote a certain way because your daddy or your mama or your aunt or your uncle or your sister or your brother or, for 100 years we've been a certain party. Go out and research a little bit and find out what that person is actually standing for and what they say. And then cast your vote with an informed decision. Anyway, join us next week at 11:30 when we will talk with business leaders about their businesses and related security issues in today's world. Thanks again to my guest, Dave Emanuel.
Thank you
and
for having me.
I really appreciate it very much. Good luck to you, what you're doing, and fantastic luck to Snellville. And I love the Evermore CID. It's a great CID. So thanks again to my guest, and for our producers, Mike and Amanda and JJ. And I'm Rick Strawn. And remember, at Paradigm Security Services, we cover more than just your assets.